Bobby Broyles and Tim McDonnell here. Should be a really interesting matchup.
Buckle up. If you're not watching, you got some problems.
16 teams remain in the FCS playoffs, and 4 of them hail from CA football. Bobby Broyles here in studio alongside Tim McDonnell for the latest edition of This Week in CA Football, powered by Geico. 3 teams started postseason play last weekend at home, and all 3 advanced to the second round. Pretty solid Saturday for CA football, huh, Tim?
Solid indeed, considering CA football led the FCS with 3 playoff victories and now makes up 25% of the remaining bracket. Incredibly proud, but across the board, I thought all 3 teams got the job done, like you and I know, and many know, that they were capable of doing. Overall, CA football now leads the FCS with a 25 record that's against FCS opponents in 2016. New Hampshire opened the eyes of many with that 64-21 win over Patriot League champion Lehigh. Lehigh came in with a winning streak, hadn't turned the ball over. A little revenge for the Wildcats, perhaps, avenging last year's first-round loss to Colgate. UNH forced 4 turnovers and dominated the ground game. We saw Dalton Grosson came alive again, 364 yards on the ground in all for New Hampshire's rushing attack. First start of 2016, Adam Reese, 18 of 30 for 273 and 3 touchdowns. Crossan had 184 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. And Trayvon Bryant also had over 100 yards, 113 and 2 touchdowns. Most points for New Hampshire since 2003. No one, I don't think, saw New Hampshire scoring that many points. We knew it would be a good game. I don't believe anyone knew New Hampshire could score that many. Behind 3 first-half passing touchdowns from Zach Bednarczyk, Villanova outlasted St. Francis. I know it was 31-21, but the Wildcat D, 6 sacks and limited the Red Flash to 27 rushing yards on 22 total carries. I mean, playoff, that absolutely key at this time of the year. Tight end Ryan Bell, career day, 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. 3 players had over 100 yards from scrimmage, so got it done by committee. Tally potentially, and I say potentially, ends his own career now with 129 wins, including 37 over the past 9 seasons. Heck of a way for him potentially to walk off the field there for the last time. And kudos to the Spiders, beating NCAA 39-10 despite sophomore Kevin Johnson. Also his first career start under center. Not too shabby. The sophomore decided to go into Coach Rocco's office based on what we're hearing, give up his redshirt season. Remember, he hadn't played the whole year. Basically giving up everything that he had just missed. It's a do-or-die situation. He comes in, 315 passing yards and 1 touchdown, added another touchdown rushing in the win. Richmond's defense, we talked about the leaders, but man, did they step up. Held the Aggies to 73 rushing yards on 24 carries. Stud running back Tariq Cohen, who happens to be the MEAC's all-time leading rusher, had just 70 yards in the loss. Shouts to kicker Griffin Trow, too. Also tied a program record with 4 field goals in the win. Special teams and defense, I mean, nothing you can ask for in the playoffs more than that.
Incredible story coming out of Richmond with Kevin
Came
Johnson.
out of nowhere, too.
Yes, absolutely. All of that first-round success results in another busy Saturday with all 3 games spread throughout the day. Let's start in Harrisonburg for a 2 p.m. kick on ESPN3 and the Watch ESPN app with the number 4 seed Jamie Dukes welcoming New Hampshire to Bridgeport Stadium for the first time since 2010.
A cornucopia of storylines headlining the first of 3 playoff contests for CA football, but you have to start with the obvious, a rematch. Remember, these 2 teams met October 15th where the Dukes won at New Hampshire 42-39. Down the stretch, it was a very close game. It wasn't a close game to start the early portion of the second half. Dukes have played 3 CA football foes all time in the playoffs and are 3-0. New Hampshire, on the other end, owns a 1-3 record against league foes in the postseason. That lone win came at Maine in 2013. UNH is the only conference team that has not played at the newly renovated Bridgeport Stadium. Will that have a factor? We'll see. The last trip in 2010 was a win. During the regular season, the Wildcats now make their 17th appearance on the road in the playoffs since 2004. Like we said, remember in 2013, won at home versus the Patriot League team in Lafayette, and in the second round, headed to Maine and got a win at Maine. The Dukes now play at home in the postseason, I should say, for the 3rd straight year. Had the extra week to prep with the bye. The headlines are looking towards right now CA football Offensive Player of the Year, Brian Shore. We know he injured his shoulder, but it's a question of will we see him or not? I don't know. Well, regardless of if we do see him in uniform, I think the Dukes still show that they're capable of playing to a high level, but that's going to be the headline of the week. Whether he plays or not, it'll be determined to find out, but it's going to be an interesting headline leading in. I think it will work its way out on Saturday as we get closer.
Well, we know of the conference rematch and the playoff implications, but give me some keys to watch for from both teams on Saturday in order to advance to the quarterfinals.
Well, I'll start with the game that already happened this year. Jamie led that 42-10 at New Hampshire with 10 minutes left. You're thinking the game's over, and here comes Adam Reese. All of a sudden, he sparks a comeback. 27 points, in fact, in that 4th quarter. Wildcats end up losing by 3, but keep in mind, UNH had a 2-point conversion, 2 2-point conversions failed, and another extra point blocked. Obviously, were impactful points in that game. In the first meeting, JMU only rushed for 173 yards, which is still a lot of yards, but well below their season average. Brian Shore took advantage of that, for sure. Threw 4 touchdowns and rushed for another. Terrence Isles and Brandon Ravenel each had 2 receiving scores, and both of them were pretty scores, I should add. They're going to be the story for me again. Whoever is the quarterback, whether it's Cole Johnson, whether it's Brian Shore, we think it'll be Shore, but we're not sure. They're definitely going to try to find success against that UNH passing defense that gives up 225 passing yards per game. Right now, on the other side of the ball, Wildcats allow 135 rushing yards per game, and you can bet Casey DeAndrade, Prince Smith, and Pop Lacey, all those guys in that secondary are going to be tested. It's a new type of speed that JMU has in it. We know that. A lot of people know that. New Hampshire knows that. They're going to be tested if they want any chance at a win. JMU offense right now leads the FCS in 7 categories, including scoring, passing efficiency, first downs, rushing. We can keep going. But if Khalid Abdullah finds space, which usually he ends up finding some space, JMU, if they can keep balance on offense as well, they're only going to have a great shot at moving forward. We're expecting Reese right now to remain the starter, and it's pretty clear. The last couple weeks, especially, UNH has found plenty of ways to move the ball. You saw Neil O'Connor make a couple of huge catches last week, had a monster game, 171 yards and 1 touchdown. Also had over 170 yards that first game against JMU. He's going to need to play well again against a very underrated JMU secondary. Guys like Raven Green and Taylor Reynolds get overlooked all the time. But keep an eye on the crowd in Harrisonburg as well. How does that impact UNH? Never played there. None of these players have ever been in Harrisonburg. As well as first downs and red zone success. I'm really looking forward to one heck of a playoff game, and I know JMU fans for certain that bye week and the Thanksgiving, it's great, but they probably want to get back to Bridgeforth and see their team play at home.
Absolutely, and you know it has to be on their minds. At JMU, the last 2 years, an early exit out of the first round, that definitely might play into a factor on Saturday. Just 1 hour later at 3 p.m., Villanova heads to Brookings, South Dakota to take on the number 8 seeded Jackrabbits of South Dakota State. This one also on ESPN3 and the Watch ESPN app.
We knew that the Nova D could be a factor, and it showed last weekend in the stats. 27 yards allowed on the ground, 1.2 yards per carry against the Red Flash. Tano Passignon was a force, recording 5 tackles and 2.5 sacks. Rob Roll and Jason Senius each had a pick in the win. Offensively, early and often was the case, 31-7 at halftime, behind 2 50-plus plays. Touchdown plays, I should say, from Bell and Jarrett McClendon. A pick 6 late in the fourth quarter made the outcome, and a late score made that outcome look a little bit closer than the score indicated. South Dakota State, out of the Valley, actually won the auto bid over North Dakota State, which many people all of a sudden seem to forget. A very, very good team. Those 3 losses that they have this season came against FBS foe TCU and playoff teams who lost last week, Cal Poly and Illinois State. Beat the Bison in Fargo 19-17. Wow. That says it all. That says the potential of this team. This game is going to feature 2 of the best longtime head coaches right now, especially in the FCS. Tally, of course, and John Stiegelmeier, each the winningest coaches at their respective schools. Both have over 130 career wins. Both know what they want from their teams. Both have built those programs on their attitudes. South Dakota State has made the playoffs each of the past 5 seasons and is extremely potent on offense. When I say that, I mean averaging 314 passing yards per game, led by Missouri Valley Football Conference Player of the Year, Taryn Christian, 29 touchdowns, 36 total, also has a receiving touchdown, 3,000-plus yards through the air this year. Receiver Jake Winicky, you're going to hear that name a lot, and tight end Dallas Goddard. 2 of the best weapons in the FCS. Each have over 1,000 yards, each average over 100 yards their game, and both right now have at least 70 catches and have combined for 26 touchdowns, so that tells you what they like to do on offense. Nova Pass D is definitely going to be tested, but showed up last week. Cats allow 170 yards per game right now. Also, though, don't overlook the fact that they've picked off opponents 17 times this season.
Outside of trying to slow down South Dakota State's offense, let's flip the page and look at what Villanova must do on the offensive side to come away with an upset victory.
Well, we talk all the time about balance in the playoffs and how critical that is at the time of the year, which defensive lines can bend, but I think it's Villanova's best chance right now is starting fast and keeping its foot off the brake. For the first 12 games this season, the Wildcats are outscoring foes 201-83 in the first half, 86-28 in the first quarter. How many times have we looked at a Villanova game and talked about the fast start? Bednarczyk and crew, I think, have to hit some big plays, and that's obvious, but they have to hit big plays like they did last week without worrying about balance. I don't think you need to get caught up in how many rushing attempts are we having versus passing. Villanova is 30-3 since 2011 when scoring at least 30 points in a game. They've done it 6 times this season, and they're 6-0 in those contests. If the defense, I think, can bend, not break, and the offense in Villanova, I think, in general, will be able to stay in this game. I love this game simply because the stage at this point in the season, it's do or die, go or show up or go home. Between 2 really good football teams, the Jackrabbits play outdoors in a new, gorgeous Dana J. Dykhouse Stadium. It's only going to add to the atmosphere of what I think is potentially a really good matchup between a great offense and an even better defense.
Final game on Saturday is scheduled for 6 p.m. as Richmond heads back to North Dakota for the 2nd straight season, but this time it's to Grand Forks to take on 7th-seeded Fighting Hawks of North Dakota. Good news is that ESPN3 and the Watch ESPN app covers this game, and it will be played indoors at the Alouris Center.
Indoors helps for sure. I mean, especially when you're talking about a team from North Dakota. And also, it's going to help having the experience that Richmond does, playing in the Fargo Dome last season. For the third straight year, the Spiders won their opening round game at home. Different-looking offense and a new-look team that we hadn't seen. We were wondering how they were going to respond, but Kevin Johnson, I thought, did pretty well considering first snap that he's taken all season long. It's not as if he's gone in backup time. This is his first snaps for the whole season in the playoffs. Brian Brown last week had 3 catches, but had 75 yards and a touchdown. Now needs one more touchdown to become the all-time program leader in receiving. 4 touchdowns, I should say. Spiders had 176 rushing yards, 24 carries from Deontez Thompson, 98 yards in that game. We knew he was going to be a workhorse in that one. Special teams, also played a huge role. Deshaun Brissett had a legit punt return. It's looking like, where's he going? All of a sudden, he hits the sideline, 92 yards to the house, and that was a game changer. 14-7 in that game. 3 Griffin Trout field goals in the remainder of that first half led the Spiders to a 24-7 lead. And talk about Trout, but 4 field goals in that game. Talked last week about upperclassmen on Richmond needing to step up, and they did that. They answered the call, and that's not thanks to us. I think that's just the nature of Richmond. Omar Howard had 11 tackles. Winston Craig, another upperclassman, added 1.5 tackles for loss and a forced fumble. Lamont Johnson had his first career pick, chipped in 2 tackles for loss, also forced a fumble, but perfect time not only right now to grab momentum, but it's a big win, too. It's a big win for this team to know the confidence that they have under Kevin Johnson. But I think it's a big win too, and confidence builder because you're going to try that, carry that over right now in the second round, which is incredibly tough, especially on the road.
Well, give us some more details about the Fighting Hawks of North Dakota. This team started the year with a loss at Stony Brook and an 0-2 record, but hasn't looked back since.
Lost to the Seawolves, as you mentioned, in the opener, despite not allowing an offensive touchdown. Remember, Stony Brook blocked a punt late that scored a touchdown, really was the difference. Lost the next week at FBS foe Bowling Green by 1 point. Then won 9 straight to earn the program's first ever FCS playoff berth at the Division I level. UND won a perfect 8-0 in conference play, the co-Big Sky champs with Eastern Washington. 5-0 at home this season, and 4 of those wins were decided by 8 points or fewer, so it goes to tell you they really have figured it out and understand how to win those close games. North Dakota, I think defensively, that's the key. That defense allows just 91.5 rushing yards per game, 6 rushing touchdowns total all season long. The offense lives by the running game itself. Sophomores John Santiago and Brady Oliveira both average over 5 yards per carry and have counted for 16 of the team's 21 rushing touchdowns. If they set the tone, Richmond could have a long day. I think if Richmond has that advantage, it could be in the passing game, depending on the development of Kevin Johnson, of course. But UND right now gives up 261 yards per game through the air, so expect guys like Brown, Tyler Wilkins, Jamal Bevels try to step up and expect even more. If they play well, the shot for Richmond advancing is only going to increase that. Playing on the road in new environments is obviously nothing new for Richmond. We've seen it in the last couple of years. And like many times in 2016, I think ultimately it's going to come down to that defense. How does this defense play, especially against the run?
A lot of seniors on that defense trying to lead the way for the Spiders. You can find all the links for Saturday's 3 playoff games on CAFootball.com now. On social, our Twitter account at CAFootball will also cover all 3 games with plenty of information.
A couple of things to keep in mind. We know at least one team will advance to the quarterfinals. That's for certain. But again, before we start looking ahead, the dates and times for the contest at the quarterfinals next week won't be determined until Saturday night or possibly even Sunday morning. Friday and Saturday are both options next week for quarterfinal play. We'll find out dates. We'll get you guys the information.
That is it from us today. As always, hope you enjoy the games on Saturday.